Hi everyone, my name is Alexandra and welcome to my channel. Or, welcome back if you've been here before. The Programmed series investigates the many forms of mental manipulation. This first video focuses on the method of mass indoctrination. There's a lot of good in this world, yes, but that is not what's gotten us to this tipping point. These videos are to present the information, and my opinions will be discussed in the conclusion video at the end of the series. So let's get started. There are three main things we'll discuss in this video. 1. How our minds are exploited. 2. How to identify social contagions. And 3. Look at information regarding the many organizations involved in mass indoctrination. Who built your frame of reference? No one likes to be taken advantage of, especially when it's their mind that's being exploited. Your mind guides your thoughts, and your thoughts guide your actions. Social engineering, or managing social change to regulate the behavior of a society, is carried out in various ways. One example is the Hegelian dialectic: problem, reaction, solution. But what if those steering the collective, and we'll get into this later, are only interested in their goals or conclusions? How do they go about convincing the public to go along with radical and damaging new ideas? They use the Hegelian dialectic, and over time, usually decades to generations, their end goal is achieved. Yuri Bezmenov, a former KGB agent, explains how long it takes to subvert or degrade a culture's morality. I suggest watching his full presentation on how to take over a country to get a better idea of how we got to this point, especially in the US. Link to his video and any relevant references is in the description below.
Various areas where public opinion is formulated or shaped: religion, educational system, social life, administration, law enforcement system, military, of course, and labor and employer relations, economy. Okay, it takes from say 15 to 20 years to demoralize a society. Why 15 or 20 years? This is the time sufficient to educate one generation of students or children. One generation, one lifetime span of a person, a human being, which is dedicated to study, to shaping up the outlook, ideology, personality. No more, no less. Usually it takes from 15 to 20 years.
The narrative and the predictable counter-narrative are all accounted for. When they steer you one way, some people go the other. But that doesn't work when they have accounted for both directions. You don't have to play their game. You don't have to buy the narrative or the counter-narrative. You cannot win this game, but you can stop playing. While most of us recognize that advertisers are trying hard to entice us to spend money, it's easy to forget how they do this. By increasing our awareness of their tactics, perhaps we can better resist impulse buying. Likewise, by increasing our awareness of mind control tactics, we can more effectively resist programming.
Technology is essential to our modern lives, and it's not all bad. It's how we connect and keep in contact with people. But this series puts a spotlight on the destructive and negative psychological manipulation, which is by far more prevalent than positive manipulation. For example, desensitization in media could be used for good, such as showing positive attitudes towards disabled or elderly people, but instead it's used to push extreme agendas. It may or may not seem obvious, but like it or not, we're being manipulated. Our attention is steered, cognitive biases exploited, subconscious influenced, and the world around us orchestrated. As humans, we want to feel in control, like we're driving the car. But just because you're behind the steering wheel doesn't mean your car isn't being towed. There are endless ways we're influenced, such as subliminals, propaganda, psychological warfare, social contagions, peer pressure, exploiting cognitive biases, and conditioning that limits creativity, originality, and potential. There are many more forms, but we will be discussing the most common ones today. The old standards of flat-out shame, embarrassment, and fear are still very effective at keeping people under control. Gaslighting is another tactic which includes the manipulator instilling false and one-sided information to the victims, making them doubt their cognition, memory, and mental state, thus distrusting themselves and blindly obeying the other party.
Thinking has been exchanged for being told what to do. Subliminal perception, a method to keep the subject unaware of the source of their stimulation. The desire is not to keep them unaware of what they are doing, but rather to keep them unaware of why they are doing it, by masking the external cue or message with subliminal presentation and so stimulating an unrecognized motive. This involves everything from traditions to addictively checking your phone. You don't really know why you're doing the things you're doing. Where we are today is the result of generations in the making. All of history adds up, like a snowball, accumulating as time goes on. Our world has become more and more interconnected, and media is virtually inescapable.
Social media has revolutionized how people create and consume information. Unlike the broadcasts of traditional media, which are passively consumed, social media depends on users to deliberately propagate the information they receive to their social contacts. This process, called social contagion, can amplify the spread of information in a social network. The age of synchronized programming is coming to a close with the decline of cable and rise of streaming services. That's because we've been conditioned to be entertained with our phones as opposed to doing things like going outside. If the TV is off, that doesn't mean psychological manipulation isn't happening. Propaganda is inescapable in our modern world exactly as it was designed to be. Most of us are familiar with the concept of subliminals, which are hidden suggestions that only our subconscious perceives. They can be audio, hidden behind music, or visual, airbrushed into a picture, flashed on a screen so fast that you don't consciously see them, or cleverly incorporated into a picture or design.
Subliminal messaging, or subliminal messages, are visual or auditory stimuli that the conscious mind cannot perceive, often inserted into other media such as TV commercials and songs. This kind of messaging can be used to strengthen or heighten the persuasiveness of advertisements, or to convey an altogether different message entirely. As the following clip shows, subliminal messages are not only used in advertising. In the 1960s, U.S. TV programming would end for the night with this video of the national anthem. When the video is slowed down, you can see that there are different words behind the scrolling words to the national anthem. That is subliminal messaging and is practically undetectable. Imagine what they're doing today if this was already being done 60 years ago.
Clickbait is another form of programming. You get source amnesia because you read a headline but you don't know where you heard it or if it's even true. One example most of us believe is the lie that the way to achieve good eyesight is to eat carrots. Carrots are good for many things, but that myth came from a World War II propaganda campaign to confuse German pilots. The average person sees somewhere between 4,000 and 10,000 advertisements every day.
Ads are designed to change your opinion about a brand or a product. Most assume the reason for ads is to show you a product or service and make you want to pick up the phone and buy it. But that's not entirely true. Why do brands that have universal recognition, so much so that they advertise this very fact, still pay to advertise?
Because this is an ad with no logo.
Because it's not about getting you to buy something once. It's about building reputation and brand image. Cults use this tactic as well. It's called building rapport. We will take a look at cults in part 2 of this series. The more familiar you are with something, the more comfortable you feel.
things you love, and